What is happening, all YouTube warriors out there? Range Day Bro back at it again. Today we're going to be talking about the MK18 SBR setup, what I consider the best setup in the world, featuring the Unity Tactical Fast Riser and the Flip to Center Magnifier. Let's get into it. If you've ever wanted something for your setup just because it looked cool, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button, guys. We all know looking cool is half the battle, so I can't fault you there. I obviously love the way this thing looks, but what I love even more than the looks of it is how it performs and how it shoots. So before I get into the setup of this Mark 18 and start talking about the Unity Tactical Riser setup that we have here, I first wanted to go over a big reason for why I started the channel, guys, was because I wanted to show everyone out there that there's plenty of normal people who are in the middle, moderates, who believe in every issue as it comes. Like myself, I look at every political issue as it comes. The one thing that I don't really negotiate on is the Second Amendment, because this is the one thing that's preserving the rest of our rights. I thought it was really important. I think it is very important to kind of state right at the beginning of the video, these things are here to preserve life and preserve the things that we love, to protect human life, our families, our communities, our country, and most importantly, our freedoms as free men. That's what the Second Amendment and that's what these guns are for. I want to encourage and challenge every one of you sexy YouTube warriors out there to be a better person, to take people under your wing, show them that guns aren't so scary, train them properly, and educate them on why so many of us are out here fighting for gun rights and why so many of us believe so strongly about our God-given rights to possess these firearms, to defend ourselves and to defend freedom and to preserve life, not to take life. These are here to preserve life and preserve the things we love. So thought that was super important. Wanted to put it right at the beginning of the video. But with that all being said, let's get into the review. So a lot of you guys, if you've watched my channel before, you've seen this Mark 18. This is my beloved bedside gun, my SBR. For that reason, I'm not going to get into super detailed on any of the other items on this besides the Unity fast setup that I have here. That's kind of what the main focus of this video is going to be. Because a lot of you may have never seen the channel before, I'm going to go over tip to butt, just like Justin Trudeau loves it, and talk about what I have on this Mark 18 SBR before I get into more of why I love this Unity setup. Spoiler alert, I love it. Let's start up front here where we have the Dead Air Sandman S with their 5.56 flash hider end cap. Dead Air did just come out with their first 5.56 can. Super excited to get my hands on that. Been communicating with Mike Pappas to try to get one over here to the channel, and hopefully we'll have a review on that coming soon. But for now, the Dead Air Sandman S is still a bomb-proof, amazing suppressor, and when you combine it with that 5.56 flash hider end cap, it's really hard to beat for the durability, the size, the weight, and what it does. Really a big fan of that. Underneath that, I have the Dead Air flash hider, just the regular 3-prong flash hider. That is all attached to the Daniel Defense Cold Hammer Forged chrome line barrel that comes on the Mark 18. This was a factory Daniel Defense pistol when I purchased it. So great barrel. Daniel Defense is really well known for their barrels. Obviously, what's covering all that up is the RIS-2 system, another thing that Daniel Defense became very famous for early on. Now up top and mounted to that, I have the Midwest Industries HK style fixed front sight post. Really a big fan of that. It's always good to have backup iron sights on your guns, guys. For a flashlight, I have the Cloud Defensive Owl. This thing is an absolute tank. I know because you guys always remind me of how big that flashlight is. It has an integrated mount and pressure pad right here in the top. It's an amazing flashlight. A huge fan of that guy. Just some Magpul ladders on the side to protect my hands from the cheese grater. That is the Picatinny rail. And then a Troy vertical grip down here because it's an SBR. Why the hell not? I also have a Magpul QD sling socket up here because the RIS-2 doesn't have one built in, unlike the BCM quad rail, but we still love it. We still love the RIS-2. Moving on back, we have a stock Daniel Defense upper and lower receiver. As I mentioned, this came from Daniel as a pistol. I then Form 1'd and SBR'd this thing. I have made some upgrades to the lower receiver, and that being the Geisley GS2 or G2S trigger. That's their cheapest trigger. Really a big fan of that. 140 bucks, and it gives you unparalleled quality, reliability. Uses full power springs for using military ammunition. You don't have to worry about light primer strikes or anything like that. I did replace the Daniel Defense pistol grip. That's a recent change I made. Got a Magpul K2. I kind of standardized on these grips on all my guns. A big fan of these. And the Reptilla CQG, those are my two favorites. I got a Radian Raptor Ambi selector switch here. That is on the 45-degree throw. And then up top, what I've upgraded is the Geisley Super Airborne charging handle. Really a huge fan of this charging handle. This is my favorite, again, on all my guns that I can afford to. I put one of these on there. And obviously in tan because I have a little bit of a black and tan thing going here. Besides that, I believe it's all stock Daniel Defense bolt carrier group. Still been running from day one. Got a lot of rounds in this thing, probably about 5,000 rounds at this point. Running flawlessly. Most of them were suppressed. And then going back from there, I've upgraded this from a pistol to an SBR when I have the B5 SOP mod, their smaller version, or the Gen 2. I forget the nomenclature, but this is the one that does not have the battery storage in it. And I really love this. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, I did paint this myself with a spray can. I have a vinyl cutter, so I just used that to do a little topographic pattern, and I'm a big fan of how it turned out. All right, so now that we've gone over the entire setup of the Mark 18, let's talk a little bit more detail about the Unity Tactical Fast Riser setup. This is their riser, and this is their flip to center for their magnifier. As far as the riser goes, obviously all this does is it picks up whatever optic you have that already attaches to a 1913 pick rail, and it raises it up higher. So in this case, we have an EOTech EXPS 3-2, and it's already a lower 1/3 co-witness. When you don't have this riser on here, when you put the riser on there, it lifts it up to a 2.26 inch height, which is going to give you a lot of benefits, which we'll kind of dive into here in a second. Before I do, there's other options for the Fast series for many more optics. But obviously with the riser, you could put any optic on here like the Vortex UH1 or the Leupold enclosed red dot, but anything that fits a 1913 you could obviously put on here. And just before I forget, I wanted to mention, if it is the absolute co-witness version of those optics, then you could still use it on the Unity Tactical Fast riser. However, the flip to center will then be too high for that optic. That's just something to keep in mind. If you want to use it with an absolute co-witness, then you can't use the flip to center magnifier for it, because then it'll be sitting too low. Now that I got that out of the way, so the Fast series has mounts for the Trijicon MRO, the Aimpoint Comp, the Aimpoint Micro, which encompasses the H1, the H2, the T1, the T2, and the Comp M5, and including any other manufacturer that has optics in that footprint, like the Holosun or the Sig Sauer, for instance. So anything that fits an Aimpoint Micro footprint, that mount would obviously also work for those. Also, they have a mount for ACOG, so they have a fast ACOG mount, and then LVPO mounts as well in 30 and 34 millimeter tubes. Before I even get into the benefits of why I love this and why I'm even making this video on this and why I even purchased these myself, and yes, I'm not simping for Unity Tactical. I am a huge fan of their company, but I bought these myself. Let's talk about the price, because that's the elephant in the room. These are very expensive mounts. The riser alone is $100, and I think the flip to center is upwards of $250 around there just for the mount itself, not including the magnifier. So when you add that up, you do kind of get into almost an unachievable or an unapproachable price point, where a lot of guys might think, wow, that's a really hard thing to justify, spending that much money on something just to lift my optics up a little bit. Do you absolutely need this setup? The answer is no. You don't absolutely need it. Just like anything else, it makes life easier. So let's just talk about some of the benefits I saw. Now that we've covered that, do you need it? No, you don't need it. Is it nice to have? Absolutely. It's very nice to have. And for these reasons exactly. And I hate to have to harp on the price, guys. I just know there's going to be someone down in the comments, and they probably haven't even watched this long in the video, talking about why Unity's trash and they're so expensive, they're so overpriced, and that UTG off Amazon is just as good. Well, I promise you it's not. I bought UTG. I bought the cheap stuff before, and it's trash. But if you're a new shooter and you can't afford to buy these, and you're trying to consider whether it's worth it or not, I would say your money's probably better spent on an actual training course with some legit operators who can teach you how to use these weapons better, or on ammunition to go train yourself. But if you have the money or you have the experience already, let's talk about the reasons why you would love this as a more experienced shooter. So the first and most obvious is it's fast, as the name implies. When you bring this guy up from a low ready right up, I mean, it's a very natural and very fast position to get yourself into. It's where your head naturally wants to go. It's going to get you a faster sight acquisition and a faster sight picture. Now, what do I mean by that? Sight acquisition is actually acquiring your sight, finding your sight. A sight picture is seeing the entire picture of the target and what's surrounding it, what's beyond it. So both of those things are going to be faster, obviously. So when you bring it up, your eye immediately finds that red dot. That is where your body mechanics want that to naturally be higher. And until you shoot with one of these, it's kind of hard to describe, but you're going to find your sight faster, and you're going to be able to see the entire picture of the battlefield a lot faster and analyze what's going on. Especially, and this plays a very specific role when you're wearing night vision goggles, or when you're wearing over the ear protection. I hear a lot of new shooters complain, and they're kind of like leaning back into the gun and trying to get their head down to find the red dot, and they're complaining about the ear probe being in the way. So it especially becomes an advantage when you're wearing ear pro or you're wearing comms or a helmet, for instance, and night vision and or a gas mask. Now, I don't have night vision yet. I don't go shooting with a helmet yet, but that is all something I intend to do here in the near future. So I'm setting up my rig to be ready for that so that it's forward compatible and I'm ready to just hit the ground running. So those are all things to consider. If you're setting up a gun for like a night vision setup, this is an amazing tool to have for passive aiming and for when you're wearing a bunch of kit. Not to mention, it's just a lot more comfortable when you're wearing a plate carrier all day and you're training all day. Not having to crank your neck down over to find that dot is extremely comfortable. And again, these are creature comforts. Do you need it? The answer is no, you don't need it. But having the right tools for the job make the job much, much easier. And that's exactly what this Unity Tactical Fast Riser setup is, because it's the right tool for the job. When you're wearing a carrier, when you're wearing night vision, when you're kitted out all day, you're going and going and going, it does make a big difference. It does also help to lift this guy off the top of the gun so you could run a PEC-15, any kind of IR laser aiming device. A lot of guys run them on their top rail, and this is going to actually elevate that optic high enough so you can still see over that. It's not going to obstruct your view. And a lot of people might be asking or wondering if this flip to center magnifier obstructs your view at all. And I'll roll in some footage right now of that just to show you what I'm talking about. It does not. You can see a very small portion of the bottom left of the EOTech window. Sliver of it is covered up by the mount itself. However, it does not impede your vision. You don't even notice that it's blocking that little tiny sliver. Probably about a millimeter of that window. If you really want to be nitpicky, I wouldn't even call it covering. It's hardly touching the bottom of that glass. As far as your sight picture goes, the one last thing I'll say about the sight picture is when you're on the gun, and what I noticed is when I'm cranked over down low to try to see through my EOTech, even with a lower 1/3, and especially with an absolute co-witness, my plane of view tends to be kind of sideways almost because I'm getting my cheek down on the gun. What that's going to do is it's going to put my horizon like so. It's going to be a little bit harder for me to see things over here and a little bit harder to see things down to the left over here. So my sight picture is kind of at a horizontal angle, whereas when I have the fast riser on here, it's a much more straight up and down shooting position. My entire field of view is more level with the horizon of Earth and of the battlefield. So I really like that. That's another benefit that I found. All right, so now that we've talked about the riser specifically and all the benefits to that, let's talk a little bit more about the magnifier setup and why flip to center is beneficial. The main reason, besides just looking badass, is in fact the snag points. When you have a traditional magnifier that flips to the side, that creates a massive snag factor, especially when you include or introduce things like slings and rappels and ropes. And for all you special operators out there LARPing like myself, may not be as much of an issue on a flat range. However, when it gets into the real world, real world operators help design this, and that was one of the big things that was a concern, is when this guy flips off to the side, you have a lot more snag points. Now with this, it sits flat, it sits right over the upper receiver, so it's out of the way, doesn't introduce any new snag points, and that's kind of the cool part about it. Now, what does this magnifier mount? What does it hold? So this flip to center magnifier can hold EOTech, Vortex, Trijicon, and SIG magnifier. So as you can see on the top here, there's a bunch of different screw patterns. I have the Vortex Micro 3X on here currently. It does fit the Micro 6X because I asked, because that was something I was looking at buying before I checked my bank account. So in conclusion, what is my synopsis? What do I think about the Unity Tactical Fast Riser and magnifier setup? I freaking love it. Obviously, as I already mentioned, the elephant in the room is the price. It gets very expensive very quickly. To you guys out there who are training, who have invested in things like plate carriers and night vision or gas masks, things of that sort. Is it necessary? No, but does it make life easier? Does it make it faster? Absolutely. I see the benefit in this tremendously. Is it better to have one fully kitted out badass rig than like 16 or like 10 standard regular AR-15s? Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. And eventually when you invest and get your night vision, you'll be able to do passive aiming as well, which is a huge deal to me. Most modern militaries have night vision now, including the Taliban, thanks to the old Sniffy Joe. So I don't want them to be able to see my IR laser when I'm aiming at them to 360 no-scope them from across the map. Now, one alternate before I go that you have to the Unity Tactical Riser is right here. This is the American Defense Manufacturing riser set here. This guy is pretty badass. This was just sent to me by ADM, so big shout out to ADM. Thank you very much. And this is not a review on the ADM riser. I have yet to actually shoot this. I just dropped the video on this Daniel Defense DDM4 PDW. I will have a full review of this coming out soon. The only added benefit that you have with something like this is you're gonna save some money because you can mount your optic and your magnifier on the same mount. Now this thing is still pretty expensive. I believe it runs just under $200, but still a lot cheaper than the combo you get with the Unity Tactical. Again, just an option here. The only downside is if you like to run your optic as far forward as possible and you throw your magnifier on here, you're gonna have to choke up pretty far to get a sight picture because a lot of magnifiers have a very short eye relief. So just something to consider. I wanted to at least throw this out there as an option for you guys who are trying to save a little bit of money, see what else is out there in the market. All right, guys, so that's gonna wrap it up for this video. Thank you so much for stopping by today. If it's your first time here, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you're a return viewer, then thank you for your loyalty, you sexy YouTube warriors. And until next time, stay safe, stay dangerous. Range Day Bro, out.